Hello, everyone. If you're watching this on YouTube, I'm not ignoring you with the sunglasses. I just noticed I look like a guy with one lazy eye watching a tennis match last week. But I'm here as always with our host, Keith Vitali, and I have a question for you. You were a
Shoot.
producer and a small actor in a 1997 fan favorite cult classic Gary Daniels movie called Bloodmoon. How did that movie come about?
A good story about that. I had produced with Keith Strandberg before. Keith is the writer producer with seasonal films with Ng Ewing's the president. And he lives in Hong Kong and he kind of calls up Keith and he says, Keith, let's do a movie. You write me a script. And they really wanted to shoot someplace different than they've been shooting locations. So Keith called me and he says, how would you like for the first time to be a co-producer, not just a producer, an associate producer, but be on his level and co-produce the movie with him? I said, wonderful. I said, I've got some ideas where we can shoot it. So he says, all right, that's your responsibility. Go find the location, go negotiate and get us a deal to where we can shoot someplace. So I had a good friend of mine named John Maynard who lived in Wilmington, North Carolina, still does. And he was a black belt under a very famous black belt named Joe Lewis who was living there. So I contacted John. I said, John, isn't there a studio in Wilmington? It's called Screen Gems. He said, yes. He said, I've got some connections here. Why don't you come out? So I drove to North Carolina. I got with him. I went into the studio and I met the president. I met the vice president. The vice president was a guy named Gerald Waller, or is a guy named Gerald Waller. It's no longer a studio there under Screen Gems. It's been sold to a company called Cinescope, but it was a big studio. We made a lot of movies during the stay. And I negotiated a deal with the guy, but here's what I did that was a little different. I offered Gerald Waller to be a producer on the film. Now, here's a guy who's in management. All he does is do the numbers. And he orchestrates and he makes sure all the different productions coming to the studio, they all run efficiently. So what I did was I offered him to be one of the producers on the show. Now, that was really sharp because it opened up Pandora's box for us, a positive Pandora's box. We had access to all the big sound stages, we had access to the back lot, and it was one of the best movies I ever did. So we decided to shoot there. And once we were there, we had to start looking for cast. And we, excuse me, went to England and we got two guys, Gary Daniels and Darren Chevali. We already have one of our guys. He's been in our action film camps for years and years. We have a really good guy that we've been working with a good bit. But the guys from England were just, we wanted to bring him in and see if we could put this deal together. And so they came in and they were wonderful. They were some of the best athletes I had ever seen in my life. From my perspective, I would look at him and go, I can't do what they can do. I can't do what Gary can do. I definitely can't do what Darren Chevali. He's no longer with us because, I'm not sure what happened, if it was COVID related or whatever, but he's no longer with us. But these two guys were fantastic. They were great, both sides of the body. They can kick, jump, spin. They could do it all. And I kept on thinking, you got Scott Atkins from England. You've got Gary Daniels. You got this guy Darren Chevali. I mean, what do they feed the guys over there? I mean, it's incredible. Those guys are just really good. So no, I was really excited. We got the film and we shot it there at the lot.
I'm going to butcher this name, but the choreographer was the choreographer, excuse me, Tony Leung Siu-Hung
Right. Tony
and
Leung.
Siu-Hung, and he there's a fight in the movie where it's Gary's estranged wife, Gary's partner, and Darren Chevalier, and they're fighting in an apartment. I thought it was really slick because it was back then. This isn't John Wick's not out, 20 something years. This is very close quarter combat. They're in the apartment. And even though it's very close quarter, very much, a very tight style, you're also seeing like Darren is doing splits between doors. Gary is doing spin kicks. How long did that a fight like that take to put together?
Well, believe it or not, sometimes the fight scenes last 2 minutes on film if it's really elaborate, but sometimes that takes a week to shoot that scene. because you have to shoot it over and over and over. And Tony Leung is a perfectionist. He's one of my favorite stunt coordinators. He has a great personality, but he also has a great team with him. And he brings six, seven, eight guys with him from Hong Kong. And they just perfect and put these sequences together. And the way it works is this: you might put together four or five moves. And so what they do is his team will show you the four or five moves. So then we got Darren Chevali, we've got Gary Daniels, whomever they're fighting over there. We got Chuck Jeffries. Now, Chuck Jeffries is the guy who's the third star of this film. We've worked with him before. He's a black actor. He's as good as those two guys. He's as talented as martial artist as anybody's ever worked with. So they put together four or five techniques and they'll show you. And then they go, all right, your turn. Then the two actors get together and they walk through it slowly, walk through it slower, maybe pick up the pace. And then they kind of correct them a little bit and they go, okay, how's that feel? Good. Okay, let's shoot. Let's shoot. All right, quiet on the set. Get cameras ready. And you shoot those four scenes. You might shoot those four scenes 50 times. Those four segments, those four movements or five movements. Boom, 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 over and over and over. And they sometimes, as the performer, you're kind of confused and frustrated because you're going, it was perfect. It just looked good. Their perspective, they're out here and they're looking for misses, hits and misses. A hit is when it looks like it comes across the screen. That's a hit. A miss is when you see the air between it. Now there's air between the fist and that's a miss. If there's a miss in any one of the techniques, stop. Let's do it again. So after those four or five techniques, you do them with as much power as possible and speed and accuracy. All right, ready and cut. All right, good. Let's do the next one. They come out, they put four or five more moves together. You sit, you wait, you watch, and then they show you the moves. That goes on and on and on for hours and hours and hours and hours. Now, you see it in the film, it looks like it only took a minute, 2 minutes. But one of my fight scenes I had with Siu-Hung, I had 50 takes. 50 takes, and it's 15, 20 seconds on film, but it took us a day to shoot it.
One of the people in Blood Moon is Robert Stikowski. Wrestling fans like myself know him as RVD, aka Rob Van Dam. No relation to Jean-Claude. He has a small part in the movie as Dutch. Now, I remember at a convention, he was talking about how, yeah, they liked me because I didn't pad up or anything. I just let them throw me wherever. How did he get cast in the film, and what was he like to work with? I always kind of personally thought that he would have a pretty bright future in films like that, or at least in stunt work.
Well, the only reason he doesn't have or didn't have a bright future is because he didn't want it, because he could have any future that he wished for. He was so talented that we're all on the set like early in the morning. We get there 6, 7, who's ever on the call sheet. And we got hair, makeup, and we're ready. And one of the takes, just one of the quick scenes is going to be with Rob Van Dam and one of the actors. And they put it together. Well, next thing you know, he can do anything. He doesn't have to be doubled. I had to be doubled sometimes. I cannot do a pirouette, three revolutions in the air and land on the side of the table. I just can't do that. Guess what? I don't want to do that. I loved it when my stunt double did that for me. But Van Damme could do it all. So we were sitting there for hours and hours and hours, and I had Keith Strandberg sitting next to me, and I'm producing it. I'm going, can you believe this? I said, he's so in love. The stunt coordinator's so in love with Van Damme, he won't stop. He doesn't even care for behind schedule, behind production. He just wants to create more scenes for this guy because the guy could do anything. I think one time they threw him in a bar with glasses and a whole bit, and he just landed in and bounced back off. And then ready, cut. Are you okay? No problem. Let's do it again. I mean, he's one of those. And guess what? You could learn from him because he had a positive attitude. He never complained one time. I guess wrestling is 10 times harder than making a film. He loved the experience. He had a great time doing it. I remember I had Herschel Walker sitting next to me. We were watching it together, the football star. And we were just amazed how enthusiastic he was, his great attitude, and how talented. And we all thought, as soon as he went home, he went, that guy's going to be a star one day. He really could be a big star.
He was a star in the realm of wrestling, but he another thing I noticed in the film, who came up with the idea? And I'm wondering this because a lot of people mistake it for like, oh, it's a horror movie, it's a supernatural movie, it's the Blood Moon. It's really not, but yet it still kind of is. You have this mystical serial killer with metal fingers and everything. Who came up with the idea to kind of blend all those different genres of film together?
This is Keith Strandberg. He loves that. I mean, and he specifically does that on purpose. It's not an accident. And there's blood on the moon tonight. We had some of the cast members saying that on the set all the time. Joe Hess, and we had a great cast for that movie. Let me just mention some of the names in that movie. So I mentioned Chuck Jeffries. Then we had Darren, of course, and Gary Daniels, Van Damme. We had Frank Gorshin. He was the old Batman back in the old days. I loved spending time with him because he loved talking about old stories. I was like a kid in a candy store, and we just got along so well. We had uh, John Maynard was in it. Of course, we had uh, a guy named Austin Hakeem Austin. We had Sean Flanagan, Michael DePasquale, Joe Hess. They were great.
I believe I watched his premiere on HBO and went to video when all the movies were real big. Now, spoiler alert, Darren dies, but Gary lives. Was there ever a plan to maybe make another one where he's portraying the same character, or was it a one and done?
It was one and done. It's really strange because Keith Strandberg really didn't like to do the same variation of the same another variation of the same movie, even though that's what he's doing as we speak today. He's doing another movie right now with Van Damme, Claude Van Damme. I'm sorry, John Van Damme, and also Kurt McKinney, and they're doing another version of No Retreat, No Surrender One. That'd be kind of interesting to see.